But we've also heard from a larger number of people who have commended us for our actions and our dedication to making this project a reality. And they are typically the people who have been to several meetings, not just one or two. Clearly, some of the bitter grumblings going on nowadays are purely for political reasons and not for the betterment of Freeport. So tonight, I've encouraged the other members of the EDC board to report to council about their experiences. I'd like to start first with Lila Diehl. Yeah, that's right, you.
My name is Lila Diehl, and I'm the secretary for the Freeport EDC. I've been a member of the Freeport EDC for almost 2 years. In the time I have been part of the Economic Development Corporation, one of the most important things we have accomplished during my term is ridding the city of eminent domain cases. I feel very strongly about this, and I would like to enlighten not only this council but also the citizens of Freeport as to how much money was needlessly wasted and for no reason whatsoever. First, I want to talk about Trico Marine. When we first came on board, the former EDC director brought us up to date as to what was happening with the Trico Marine property at that time. The new EDC board was informed that the management of Trico was originally asked about selling their property to the EDC. The EDC director told us that the response was, not really, but that they might sell it for $600,000. The former EDC director, the city manager, and the EDC board felt that this was too much money, so instead, they offered him a deal that included 3 things. First, they would trade him the same amount of waterfront property that he had for another location on the river. Second, they would build him a facility comparable to the one that he had on his property. Third, they would move him into the new facility with the use of City of Freeport workers. This was all well and good. However, there was never any of these specific conditions put in writing or any detailed contract drawn up. With nothing in writing, work began, but there was never any stopping point specifically identified by a written agreement or a contract, so money just kept being approved and spent by the former EDC director. By the time that deal was completed and Trico was moved to their new facility, the cost to the taxpayers of Freeport was over $900,000. The original Trico property had been on the Missouri County tax roll for approximately $58,000 to start with. But the cost to the taxpayers of Freeport to acquire this property was almost $1 million because of bad management and poor decisions. Next, we have the Western Shellfish, a subsidiary of Western Seafood. Western Shellfish has 100 feet of property to the east of the Marina dry stack building that would be needed for phase 2 of the Marina project, but not phase 1, which is the project we're attempting to complete right now. With all of the mismanagement, overspending, and bad blood created on this project so far, there's some doubt that the taxpayers of Freeport will ever be in favor of developing phase 2. When we were first appointed, this EDC board spoke with Mr. Wright-Ward III, whose family and company own the Western Shellfish property, about the possibility of Freeport EDC to purchase this property. It was disclosed to us at that time that the 100 feet of Western Shellfish property was being held as collateral in a loan and could not be sold until the loan is paid off. Mr. Gore has informed the board that once their property is cleared as collateral, that he would make it available for the sale to the EDC. In the meantime, Mr. Gore has offered to lease the property to the EDC for a 40-year period to run concurrently with the 40-year leases the previous EDC board has signed with Walker Royal and his organizations. Furthermore, Mr. Gore has offered the EDC unrestricted use of the land up until such a time as the EDC leases or buys the land from Western Shellfish. We have discussed an option whereby the EDC would trade land to Western Shellfish for the 100 foot of riverfront property. That offer cannot be tendered without written consent from his financial lender, and it's my understanding that up to this point they have not agreed to do so. Mr. Gore has been more than helpful with everything this board has done to get this project moving forward as the engine of our downtown economic redevelopment. Now I would like to discuss the eminent domain case against Western Seafood. There never has been any sound logic on why the Freeport EDC filed eminent domain against Western Seafood's 300 foot of riverfront property on the west side of the Marina project. The only phrase I could think of to describe this action is greedy abuse of power. One of the reasons this board decided to drop the eminent domain case against Western Seafood was because it was disclosed to us by Mr. Walker Royal that he and the project never really did need the Western Seafood property. To settle the eminent domain case with Western Seafood, the Freeport EDC agreed to pay a court-ordered judgment of almost $500,000. This case was being appealed at the time, but there was no guarantee that the Freeport EDC would have won. What was guaranteed was that the attorneys for the eminent domain case would have continued to profit from the poor decision to abuse the power of eminent domain. Lastly, the attorneys representing the city and the EDC told the current EDC board that they had advised the city leaders and the Freeport EDC against using eminent domain in the first place. The attorneys reported to the Freeport EDC that they had made it very clear that they thought using eminent domain in the manner in which it was planned was wrong. Had the previous city leaders and the previous Freeport EDC followed their attorney's advice, it would have saved taxpayers in Freeport over $1 million, and not to mention all the bad blood that was created in the meantime. Lastly, but not least, is the Wanda Leonard Jones property. Wanda Jones allowed the local chapter of the SPCA to operate a thrift shop out of her building that was situated on the only tract of land associated with the old Tarpon Inn village that was not owned by Walker Royal. This property was never needed or intended to be used for the marina. Wanda Jones's property was attempted to be taken by eminent domain so that it could be used for upland development by Mr. Walker Royal. Ms. Jones offered to sell the property to the Freeport EDC for $100,000. The Freeport EDC countered with a $90,000 offer. According to Ms. Jones, every time she made an offer to the Freeport EDC director, he would counter with something less. In the end, to rid Freeport of the eminent domain abuse, this Freeport EDC board purchased the Wanda Jones property for $195,000, of which $60,000 was her legal bills that she had ran up in an attempt to fight eminent domain. Failure of the EDC director to negotiate in good faith with Ms. Jones caused the taxpayers to pay $95,000 more for the property than what they could have purchased it for in the beginning. It is important to mention at this point that Mr. Walker Royal has told the Freeport EDC that he does not intend to fulfill any expectations of upland development in Freeport. In summary, none of the eminent domain cases that were filed ever needed to be filed. All of the eminent domain cases could have all been handled in a more timely and civil manner. All in all, eminent domain abuse cost the taxpayers of Freeport close to a third, that's $2 million, of the original $6 million that was supposed to have been spent on the marina. If the Freeport EDC had the money that was spent on eminent domain abuse, the legal bills that supported it, the Freeport Marina project would have been completed by now and equally as important, on budget. The citizens and taxpayers of Freeport need to come to the city council meetings and the EDC meetings so they can learn firsthand, like I did, what is going on in the city that they live in, and more importantly, pay taxes in. Right now, we have good leadership. We have people who are trying to watch out for and care about where our money is going. We should be proud of them, and we should be behind them and helping them. I'm proud to have been part of this group. We have worked very hard and have put in countless hours of our personal time, and that is time away from our families, because we live in this town and we care about Freeport's future. What was sold to the citizens of Freeport as a $6 million investment in the future of our city has suffered numerous cost overruns and legal setbacks because of poor decision-making and bad choices, not the least of which was eminent domain abuse. Now the price tag for this project is much more than $6 million, and I think it's important to the citizens and taxpayers to understand the real reasons why. Thank you very much.